Thank you for joining us, everyone. Just a reminder that the presentation will start exactly at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so bear with us, and we look forward to seeing you soon. For those of you just tuning in, we're just waiting until 2 o'clock to get started, so please be patient and we'll be with you very shortly. Hi, everyone. We're going to be starting in about 1 minute's time. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Kelley Keehn's webinar on affording retirement living presented by Chartwell Retirement Residences. My name is Amanda Richards, and I'm the Director of Business Development and Community Integration at Chartwell. Just before we begin, I'd like to mention that this presentation will be recorded and available on our Facebook and YouTube channels later on. However, you'll want to stick around because Kelley is going to be answering some questions live at the end of the presentation today. To submit a question at any time, please use the comment button and we'll do our best to respond to it at the end. And now I have the pleasure of introducing you to our keynote speaker, Kelley Keehn. Kelley is a personal finance educator, author, speaker, and media personality with over 20 years of experience in the Canadian finance industry. She recently released her 10th book, Talk Money to Me, and has 2 audio courses. She serves on many prominent financial committees and has conducted thousands of television, radio, and print interviews on a variety of financial literacy topics for a global audience. Her mission is to help Canadians feel good about their money. As a financial professional, I'd like to mention that Kelley's opinions and advice are her own and not Chartwell's. We are so happy that she is willing to share her expertise with our audience today. Kelley, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Amanda, thank you so much for having me. I mean, I'm so happy to be here. This is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I really do feel passionately that, seniors need to thrive in their later years and that retirement living can empower them to lead a happier and more comfortable life. And, when we met and I partnered with Chartwell a few years ago, I went across the country visiting different Chartwell locations and got to meet so many fellow passionate staff there that also feel passionate about seniors. But I got to talk to a lot of residents. And what they told me was they wish that they had done it sooner. So I'm so happy to be talking to all of you here today because if affordability is the issue that's on your mind, we want to take all that off the table. So we live in a new reality right now, and because of possible Wi-Fi disruptions, I am working at home. And to minimize any kind of background noise, I've pre-recorded the bulk of my presentation for you. I've gone ahead and done that. So, but as Amanda said, we're going to be here live at the end. So please make sure you submit any of your financial questions. There are no dumb questions. We want to answer anything that's on your heart and mind. And without further ado, we will begin the presentation.
I'm so happy that you're here today because I want to help you. There's so many people exploring retirement living right now and the many benefits of the lifestyle. So if you've also been exploring this option and have encountered some, presumptions from others that this lifestyle just isn't affordable for seniors, that might be because some people hear how much retirement living costs per month and they get sticker shock and they think, wow, that's more than my pension and other benefits every month. And of course I can't afford it. But what I want to help you achieve today in this presentation is an understanding of whether retirement living is an affordable option for you or a loved one, as well as the right next steps to see if this option is viable. So I'm also going to tackle some of the financial misconceptions and assumptions out there about retirement living, including the very common myth that living at home is free. And lastly, I want you to know that if you think a lifestyle retirement might be for you, it's really more affordable than one might think. Now, let's begin with one of the most common things I hear when people explore retirement living. Why would you want to spend your savings or what you're bringing in monthly on a retirement residence when the mortgage on your current home is paid off and you're living essentially for free? Well, first off, I suspect that the reason you or a loved one are considering retirement living in the first place is that things in your current living situation just aren't working. Maybe you're tired of spending your energy cooking and cleaning. You might need some care support, or you simply just don't want to live by yourself anymore without the social life that you deserve. Now, to get more, it often means paying more, but sometimes this is well worth the investment in terms of your health, happiness, and peace of mind, especially if you aren't feeling safe. But what's important to note here is that you may not be paying that much more for this lifestyle and retirement residence. And this is because aging in your home really is anything but free. So while you're weighing the pros and cons from a lifestyle perspective in terms of retirement living or aging at home, it's important to also weigh the financials when comparing the costs. So I recommend that you begin with considering your daily living expenses. So when you add up all of your monthly and annual costs to live and run your home, you may be surprised to find out how much you spend each month to maintain that quality of life. And in some cases, an option like a retirement residence doesn't really cost that much more than the lifestyle you're currently leading. So let's say that you're also considering staying at home, but maybe you need private home care because you or a loved one just has that daily support need. It's also important to really examine these costs. And depending on the province that you live in, the cost can vary widely. So I weighed in with an expert business friend of mine, Karen Henderson. She's an independent planning specialist. And we talked about this topic at length. And she mentioned that home care across the country, it really varies from around $24 to $35 an hour. And with nursing costs, that can be as much as $60 an hour. And she shared with me a story about a client of hers that was looking after her father, and he decided to age in his home, but was dealing with prostate cancer. And the home care for that and the other costs were over $10,000 a month. So what you need to know is if you or a loved one have high care needs, without realizing it, you could be spending upwards of $100,000, even $120,000 a year, just like Karen's clients were. So that is more expensive than life in a retirement residence, which offers many benefits. So don't forget home care. And it doesn't, that it doesn't cover costs like additional needs like meal delivery, home keeping, cleaning your house, snow shoveling, home repairs, and maintenance, all of those things. And meanwhile, while living at home, I'm sure that you still want to stay socially active, especially with what we're dealing with today. And there's a cost to that too. There's transportation costs, taxis, all of the costs that go with owning your own vehicle if you still have one, entertainment costs like coffees or meals out with friends, and of course, other recreation like exercise classes, shopping trips. That all adds up really quickly. Of course, we're talking about post-pandemic when we can get back to our old way of life. And then lastly, don't forget about all of the home ownership expenses that you might be facing as well. Even if you're living mortgage free, there's so many other expenses with owning a home or renting an apartment. So you may have property taxes, utility bills, insurance, condo fees, the list goes on. And I think that you'll find that as you tally these things up, you might be paying a lot more a month than you might have actually assumed. Now, it's also good to recognize which of these home-related expenses might just disappear as you move into a retirement residence. How about things like property taxes, utilities, home maintenance costs like replacing a roof or windows, of course, appliances, and just regular upkeep and repairs, both major and minor, those can really add up. Cleaning or meal services, snow and lawn care, we're of course in wintertime right now, spring around the corner. And then just miscellaneous expenses like groceries and entertainment and transportation. So once you really do that cost comparison, if you aren't in need of a lot of care from a home care provider, you may still find retirement living will cost more than you're paying currently at home. However, when you think of the value of services at a retirement residence, what they offer, such as dining options and fitness and leisure opportunities, 24/7 on-site staff support, and then of course, a safe environment that's also social. You may actually find that the cost is well worth it, and it can make your life so much more convenient, fulfilling, and overall just more enjoyable. Now that we've examined the importance of considering your current at-home costs, let's look at another way that you haven't just determined that couldn't help you afford retirement living. So if you own a home, this is the single biggest financial means that you have to achieving your goal of moving to a retirement residence. So depending on where you live and the size of your home, you may actually be sitting on an asset worth hundreds of thousands of dollars at least, I'm sure, if not more. And that can really help you achieve the lifestyle that you want in your retirement years. So I want you to think about the worth of your home. And when you sell it, you don't just have to sit on that money. You can actually use those tax-free proceeds, right? Because when you sell your home, it's tax-free, and they can be invested to go to work for you so that you can help fund the, retirement that would help increase the enjoyment in your life. So let's just look at an example. If you sold your home, and let's just take the national average of $500,000, very likely your home is worth more than that, and you invested the proceeds in a very low risk portfolio, so nothing risky, maybe some GICs at your bank, guaranteed investment certificates with some bonds, you could expect to earn around 3%. That's potentially on $500,000 of $15,000 a year, or around $1,250 a month. Now, if you could take a little bit more risk, maybe go into more bonds, things of that sort, that $500,000 could now turn into $20,000 a year, or just about $1,700 a month. Now, those returns can go a long way when it comes to offsetting your monthly rental costs in retirement. So might be something that you want to explore. Now, in addition to your home, you have other personal property that you may be willing to sell it. And then could you invest those proceeds? So I want you to think about a cottage or a trailer that you might have, maybe an art collection that you no longer want to hold on to, or perhaps a car, boat, or some other recreational vehicles. I do recommend, however, consulting a realtor and or an appraiser for an accurate estimate of any property that you are considering parting with. So let's get mathy for a second again. Just as we were talking about with the house, if you sold those assets and invested them, let's say, they all added up to $200,000, and you had, again, a low risk portfolio earning around 3% on those investments per year, that's another $6,000. So, I just want to talk and address a little bit about some nervousness that my office has been getting a lot of outreach from seniors about. Certainly when we're talking about investments, my goodness, 2020 was a roller coaster year. Lots of volatility in the market, meaning wide swings of ups and downs. And especially when the pandemic hit, there was so much uncertainty and, of course, cause for worry and concern. But if you have been watching the markets, you also know that they catapulted right up and are quite a bit up from the lows in March and April of this year. But definitely it's important that if you're looking at liquidating any of your assets or investing, that you definitely are talking to a professional, that you're not doing it haphazard, and that ideally you have a year or many years that you're getting out of the market to fund your retirement. And the same applies when you're selling your real estate. If possible, you should be looking a year or two ahead. But if that's just not possible for you or a loved one, that's okay. That's where other funding options can come in, like a reverse mortgage or a line of credit that can just buy some time for you until it is right. But we'll get into that shortly. So first, let's look at maximizing government tax credits and also the government programs that are available to you. So, do you know what is available to you? It's so important to explore all of these avenues. You may be, familiar with some of the government benefits, but not necessarily the tax credits that could offset some of the tax that you pay and go towards your costs in a retirement residence. So let's just break it down. And there's a little homework for you to do a little research either on your own or with your financial professional to see where you sit and how much could go towards your retirement living. So first, I'm sure you're familiar with CPP, known as the Canada Pension Plan. So this is one of the two social insurance programs that the federal government offers. Now, if your spouse has passed away, you also may be eligible for the survivor's benefit. And this benefit depends on what you paid into it. As we look at the old age security pension, that's the OAS, this you don't have to directly pay into it. You have, over the years as a taxpayer, paid into it. And it does get clawed back at a certain amount. Now, there's also guaranteed income supplement. That is for lower income Canadians. So that's something that you could look at depending on where your income is. And these things may change each year depending if you're selling stocks or cashing in on different investments. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Of course, there's tax credits like the federal attendant care tax, and that allows older adults to claim medical expenses for attendant care. So if you or your spouse are receiving any kind of care services in a retirement residence, your rent can potentially be reduced when you file your taxes. And then, of course, there's financial support options available for veterans, as well as support benefits according to your province. So you really also want to make sure that you or your professional are digging into any kind of provincial benefits as well, because all of that is just going to free up more cash for you or lower your tax bill. And then, of course, there's the medical expense tax credit. So this also allows you to claim a portion of the care fee in a retirement home. So these government supports, as you can see, can go a long way to making retirement living so much more affordable. And you've worked so hard for all of these benefits in your life. Now's the time to make sure that you're really maximizing them. Now let's look at some other funding options that you may or may not have considered. So in addition to some of the examples we just covered, there's of course your pension. either from work or from government. And that usually is a fixed amount. So that is super helpful with budgeting, but it can fluctuate a little bit. Of course, there's your RIF, which is your Registered Retirement Income Fund. So this is, you saved all your life in an RSP perhaps, and this is what you had to convert to at age 71 at retirement. Now, there's a minimum payment that you must take out of your RIF each year, but there's no maximum. So you can take out as much as you want. The caveat, of course, to that is you have to include it as income in your tax return the next year. So you just want to remember that you are paying tax on any withdrawals and making sure that you're very carefully considering those funds, and if there's any other alternatives that make more sense if you're going to be paying a lot of tax to do that. An LRIF is a locked-in RIF. So what that means is these were proceeds that were once part of a pension. Maybe you switched employers and they allowed you to take those funds out. Like the RIF, you have a minimum payment, but you also have a maximum payment each year. So unlike the RIF, you can't take out any amount that you want. But of course, with the RIF and the LRIF, while those funds are sitting around in there, they're still growing tax-free in whatever investments that you have. So that's a big benefit to those as well. There is, I'm sure you've seen the commercials for reverse mortgages, and that, that may make sense. And we're going to look at that in a moment. If you need that extra money, but maybe it's just not the right time to sell. Maybe your spouse is still at home, or you have an adult child that has come back home, or real estate pricing just isn't favorable at the time. I'm certainly thinking of my friends in Calgary that real estate prices have still suffered there. So, if it's just not right, there are funding options. Now, we're going to talk about some of the cons of a reverse mortgage, that interest rates are much higher than a traditional bank product. But the big sell for them is that you don't need income to approve for them, and you don't have to make any payments unless you want to. And then lastly, there's a line of credit from your bank. This is a super flexible option, and it can provide you with cash like a reverse mortgage, but at a much lower rate. However, you generally will need income to approve for this, and you still need to make some payments. You would still need to make at least interest-only payments. So we'll look at that as well in a moment. So let's take a look at how a reverse mortgage looks like. So you can see here the dark bar graph there with the little house sitting on top of it. Certainly not as interest rate favorable as a conventional mortgage at your bank or a home equity line of credit that we'll talk about in a moment. And by no means are we promoting a reverse mortgage as an option. We just want you to know all the possible solutions to cash that are available to you if you aren't ready to sell and you need, you're looking for that option. So a reverse mortgage allows you to access cash from your home equity tax-free, and you don't pay anything back while you're living or as long as you don't sell your home. Now, you can make payments if you choose to. So that's important to know, that you could treat it more like a traditional mortgage if you wanted to. And again, as I mentioned before, the interest rates are higher. So let's just look at a little example. And remember too, you don't have to take out a huge reverse mortgage, right? Maybe you just need a little bit as a bridge. So what would that look like? Let's take an example of $100,000 that you were taking out as a reverse mortgage. Again, they're tax-free. So the first year you'd owe about $5,000 on that. Now, if you don't make any payments, it's obviously going to compound, and so it'll be a bit more and a bit more every year. Again, using that example of your home being worth around $500,000, let's say you didn't sell it, you kept it, and it increased on average 3% per year. That would equal $15,000 in equity or growth. So the interest on the reverse mortgage, when you subtract that, you're actually ahead $10,000 in that first year in this example. So again, you don't have to borrow the whole amount of your home. It could be a lesser amount, and your payments aren't made until you sell, you pass away, or if you want to, you can certainly do that. So let's look though, what if you do need to borrow more? What if you really want to know that you've got some, some cash there and it's going to cover a lot of expenses. You don't want to go through the process again for whatever reason. And you want to take out $300,000. How would that look instead of the $100,000? So again, we're using the 5% rate on the reverse mortgage and assuming that your $500,000 home increases by 3% per year. That would be $15,000 owing in interest, but your home also theoretically increased by $15,000. So you would break even that first year. However, you would, in that example, go into the red in subsequent years. So you can see, a lot of numbers for you to consider. Sorry to get so mathy on you, but it's important for you to know exactly how much of a benefit or risk it is for you. But you want to make sure that you're talking with your bank or financial advisor before you're executing any funding option or cashing in any investments. Even if you absolutely think that an option is not for you, I think it's really important that you at least take the time to explore all of them. Make sure that you look at interest rates, taxation, prepayment, any type of administrative costs, setup costs, appraisal costs before you decide. The more information that you have, the better informed decision that you can make. Now, let's look at a line of credit, as I mentioned before. They're also often called HELOCs, so a home equity line of credit. What does this mean? Think of it kind of like a credit card with no card. So we're going to use the example again of $100,000. You need $100,000. Is a line of credit a better option? Again, these proceeds are tax-free. In this example, I'm going to use you likely can get a much lower rate. I do have to preface saying that it depends on a number of factors, such as if you have income, your credit score, things of that sort, your relationship with your bank. But for this example, I'm going to use the rate of 1.5%. So you can see quite a bit lower than a reverse mortgage. And what will that actually cost? Only $125 a month in interest-only payments. So if you think about your credit card, you only have to make a minimum payment, which is usually around your interest and a little bit more. With a line of credit, and the HELOC means that it's secured against your home, you're only making that low monthly payment. So in my example, it's $125 a month. Now you can pay it off anytime. You can pay it down, run it back up. It's very, very flexible. So it's totally up to you, but you likely will need income to approve for it. So, certainly something that you want to consider. Now let's get a little mathy again. Let's say you took out your line of credit and you still have that $500,000 home appreciating or growing at around 3% a year, which is $15,000. After you paid the interest only on your line of credit, you'd actually be ahead $13,500. So it definitely could make sense, but remember, numbers only tell one side of the story. You have to make sure your comfort level is there and all of that type of thing. And like a reverse mortgage, you don't have to take out a monster line of credit. You can just take out what you need or have it set up there in case you need it for later. So let's just review a couple of rules around HELOCs. You cannot take out more than 65% of your home's value. Like I said, you have to make those interest-only payments. So if that is not going to be feasible for you, maybe a reverse mortgage might be better for you. If you just don't have the income, and of course your bank won't approve you for it, that might be tough. You can pay it down at any time, but also I want you to be really careful of any administrative costs, setup fees, appraisal fees. Again, make sure you get everything in writing. Now, this is a question I get all of the time, and I'm sure one that's on your heart and mind is, how far will your money take you in a retirement residence? And then what happens if after a few years you no longer can afford the lifestyle and actually have to move? And you know what? This is a really natural question to have, but not an easy one to answer on your own, not even for me. So I actually went to a business colleague of mine, Jason Heath. He's a fee-only certified financial planner. And he gave me a scenario to present for you. And this is in his own words. So he wants you to think about this example that if a retirement residence that you're interested in, let's say has a monthly cost of $4,500 a month. Now, that might seem like a lot of money, especially if you haven't paid rent or haven't had a mortgage for a lot of years. But if he says if you're receiving the maximum CPP and OAS, that's going to be around $21,000 a year. So he's saying that you might only need after that around $200,000 of proceeds from the sale of your home, which $200,000, I think most homes are going to sell for a lot more than that. That would actually fund 6 years of costs into a retirement residence. Now, this assumes a monthly cost increase of 3%, because that's important as well, that you're looking at, how much will costs go up with inflation. Everything goes up, as we know. And then also Jason's using a 3% growth rate on the proceeds from the sale of your home, as we were in our previous example. And if you're a homeowner in an expensive market, of course, like Toronto or Vancouver, that amount most likely is probably closer to $1 million that you'd be able to sell your home, resulting from, obviously much more funds that you can invest to allocate towards your costs. So I also asked him about a scenario where someone requires a lot of care. So let's say it's in an assisted living or memory care residence, and therefore the cost could potentially be higher. And he told me if someone's costs are higher, say $6,000 a month, and a person's home proceeds, now he's saying around $295,000, for example, that could fund 6 years of assisted living or memory care. Now, again, he's assuming the maximum CPP and OAS entitlement, and of course, a 3% interest rate on, or a 3% growth rate on the home proceeds. So when you, again, sorry for all the numbers, but it's important that we really dig into these details. So with all that in mind, my greatest recommendation for you, as you can appreciate very quickly, is the need for a professional to just crunch these numbers. We wanted to give you an idea of the numbers, but your situation is likely very different. And that's where someone like a certified financial planner can really, not just crunch the numbers, but go through a number of scenarios for you to help you figure out how to achieve what you desire in your retirement years. And they can also just consider your investment options, what financial credits, as we talked about, programs that you're eligible, and at the end of the day, what's most important to you. So understanding your finances and the possibilities that can be achieved with them will go so much further in helping you feel really confident that you can take that next step in choosing a lifestyle like a retirement living can offer you. So talking about professionals, let's talk about what kind of professionals are out there and what kind of care you should expect from them. So you can see on your screen, you've likely been dealing with your banker for years or decades and probably have a pretty good relationship. They can go through a lot of this with you and really explore a lot of those funding options as well. But some of the cons, the drawbacks, is they really, they might be limited to bank products, which is okay. That might be fine for you, but they also might have limited experience when it really comes to the nuance of financial planning, getting into a lot of detail and what those care costs could be. But a great place to start. You could also look to someone like a financial planner or a financial advisor, and they will usually give you, a free consultation to start. You should be getting impartial advice from them. Very important. But some of the cons are that, again, they might be limited in some of their information about retirement living, and also, certainly some of the feedback that we get is that they might be heavy in selling you a product or a service. And are you being swayed in one direction or not? So if that's your fear, there are professionals out there that charge a fee. They're fee only. They don't work for a bank. They don't work for a financial institution. They sell no products or services. They're called fee only certified financial planners. The drawback, though, is you have to pay for their service. It's either an hourly fee, so usually $250 to $300 an hour, or they may charge by the plan. But if you really have a lot of considerations, you have complex investments, a complex scenario, and you want that impartial, unbiased, 100% opinion, that may be a really good, step for you. I do caution that there are some bad actors in the financial industry, as in any industry. It is so vitally important that you do your research, you do your due diligence, and make sure that you are getting somebody that you're comfortable with, of course, but also that is licensed, that has a governing body that oversees what they do. And every single thing we've talked about here today, taking money out of your RIF, considering a reverse mortgage or a line of credit, regardless of what the financial advice is, please ensure that you get it in writing. Because I don't know about you, but when someone presents something complex to me, even the last time I was at my doctor's office, I know I forget 80% as soon as I walk out the door. So it's definitely not unreasonable to ask, and actually whomever you're dealing with should be offering to provide any recommendations in writing. Do not be afraid to ask. I think this is probably the most important slide for us to cover in our last slide. With all this information in mind, you may still have a very difficult time switching from saver to spender. When I was in the financial industry, most of my clients were in their retirement. And I have to tell you, this was a difficult time for them. If it was taking money out of their RIF, certainly if it is looking at improving your quality of life to consider a retirement residence. And I think back to my Uncle John. He was 95 years old when he passed away. And I can't imagine how he could have lived longer. He was quite an interesting fellow. But, I do wonder if he could have lived better. And I didn't know all this information I'm presenting to you at the time. If I would have known it and could have sat down and really had him understand his options, I wonder if he would have chosen to not live at home. As you can appreciate, he grew up in the Depression era. He, like you, saved his money diligently for decades and decades. And he just, even though he was a bachelor, could not see spending that money on himself. And I wish that I had taken the time and had the knowledge to examine with him that living at home wasn't free, that, the cost for retirement living might not have been as much as he thought, and possibly quite a bit less. And I do know that as a bachelor, he had quite the tea and toast lifestyle that required him, unfortunately, to spend later years of his life not in the best shape that he could, was forced into a care facility because his health was failing. And it didn't have to be that way. I think he could have had a more fulfilling social life. I think his later years could have been so much more, enjoyable and spent with others. So when you think of it, we spend our entire lives trying to save for the future. What's important to understand is, as you get into your 80s and 90s, the future really is now. And lastly, a friend of mine told me that his 82-year-old mother was nervous to spend money on a retirement residence. And he just said, Mom, this is your hard-earned money, and you should be spending it so you can enjoy your life without worry. I think this couldn't be truer. Isn't a situation like seeking more support so you can live comfortably exactly what you intended when you first began to save all your money all those years ago? Many people who eventually make the move to a retirement residence say they wish they had done so sooner. I think like my Uncle John would have said. And often one of the biggest reasons they delay is because they struggle to give themselves permission to put themselves first and use their money pretty much for what you saved it for. So if you still aren't sure, consider seeking guidance from people that you can trust. And like I said, as well as from a financial planner, to ensure your money will go the distance with you. And if it makes your life happier and safer, you're all the richer for it. So thank you for working with me through those numbers and examples. I'm sure you have some questions, and I'm delighted to answer them. And back with you, Amanda.
Thank you so much. I'd like to sincerely thank Kelley for her insightful presentation today. If you'd like to learn more from Kelley, I invite you to visit Chartwell's website, chartwell.com, and explore our library of videos and blogs authored by her. She discusses all of the topics we've already covered, plus much more, including how to approach financial conversations with family members, how to fund your retirement and preserve your children's inheritance, if that's something that's a concern for you, and tips for shopping around for financial advice. We consider ourselves fortunate to be able to present you with Kelley's great advice on these important financial topics. For those of you who've just begun exploring retirement living at Chartwell and you're ready to learn more about the lifestyle and how it can help you or a loved one, we have a team of knowledgeable representatives who are available to answer your questions and guide you in the right direction, including any financial questions you may have. You can call us or email us anytime. And for those of you who've been actively researching retirement living and perhaps you've already taken an in-person or a virtual tour of one of our residences, now's the perfect time to get in touch with your Chartwell Retirement Living consultant to book another discussion or a personalized tour. So now Kelley and I are going to take some questions from participants, and we have had lots flowing in, Kelley. So this has been
Good.
excellent. Yes. So
Awesome.
the first question that came in, should I be nervous about investing the money I get from selling my home? Are the markets unstable because of COVID? Should I wait?
Yeah, that's such an important question. And the markets are always kind of, especially during COVID, have been kind of fantastical, right? New highs, new lows. Every day has been something. Now, if you're selling your home to help fund your retirement, it doesn't mean you have to go all into the stock market. You can, as we illustrated, you can go into quite a safe basket of investments that aren't going to fluctuate like the stock market will. But if you have that savvy and if you think that you want to take advantage because you don't need all of that money right away, you can certainly get in a very strategic way through dollar cost averaging, meaning that you're getting in every month or things of that sort. So you definitely want to talk to a financial professional that's going to weigh all of those needs, because that is the last thing that you want, is that not sleeping at night factor. But so you want to look at all of your investment options before you look at investing those proceeds.
I think that's really great advice, Kelley, and something that's top of mind for all of us, whether we're considering moving to retirements or not. It's such an
Yeah.
interesting time in the markets right now. It's great. So the next question that came in, why are some retirement residences more expensive than others? And I can actually answer that one
Yeah.
for this viewer. So if you think about where a retirement residence is, depending on the province, the location, the size of the suite that you're interested in, the type of care or assistance that you might require, there can be a lot of variables that play into the cost of retirement living. So in order to get the right quote, the right information, we really encourage you to speak to the retirement living consultant at the property or properties that you're considering and gather all of that information. They can put together a tailored quote based on your unique needs that'll address all of those concerns. A great question. All right, we had another one that came in here, Kelley. Should I wait to sell my house so I have money in hand when I'm ready to move into a residence, or should I make the move first and then worry about selling my house? I'm nervous if I don't sell my house first, I could be paying for both the house expenses and retirement home expenses at the same time.
Yeah, such a great question. I mean, at the end of the day, I always tell people, regardless of whatever your decision is, it should be a life decision first, and then find a way to make the finances work for you. I know that's tough, but that's why we went through some of the options of, borrowing to kind of bridge to help you get there. So you're not rushed to sell your home. What I worry is if you wait too long, what is that quality of care that you're going to get while you're waiting? So I think if you sit down with a financial professional, they can figure, or your banker, they can figure out a way to help you bridge it. As we saw, if you are looking at, let's say, a secured line of credit or something of that sort, even if it takes a while to sell your home, it is really not that expensive to service it because interest rates are
Mm.
so low. Of course, not encouraging you to have to do that, but you want to know that that's an option, and you're not taking out this huge, let's say, line of credit. It's only maybe month to month to kind of bridge it till your home sells. But it's a very valid point, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised that if you sit down with a pro and crunch those numbers, let your finances now serve you as opposed to you waiting for that sale.
Yeah, I think, excellent point. And two, we're seeing the housing market in so many of our areas across the country just exploding right now. So in many cases, it might be a shorter wait than people might be thinking to move that house. Along the same lines, we have another question here. What are the financial implications of a senior waiting to move in until they have higher care needs?
Right, right. Such a great question. And I mean, there's so much evidence out there that shows that when you get in, when you really don't need to into retirement living, that extra quality of life, that social interaction, the nutritional component, the extracurricular activities, all of that contributes to your wellness. So if you think about it, it could potentially preserve those higher fees later because you may not actually have that eventuality. So definitely something to think about.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people worry about and they want to wait until they need lots and lots
Right.
of care to make that move. But, inevitably that ends up being a bit more expensive or a lot more expensive. So there is a financial benefit to making that move earlier, as you indicate. Yeah, excellent. Another question. So, and actually, I can answer this one. Is there someone that will help us on an individual basis to figure out the best option? So, what I would say to that is that our retirement living consultants at every one of our Chartwell properties, they are true retirement living experts. This is what they do every day. They speak to families and seniors across the country and help them find the best solution to whatever challenges or situations they may be facing. So rely on our staff to answer those questions and find those solutions for you. Once they've done that, once they've crafted that, ideal scenario, then you can take that to your financial expert and sit down with your financial advisor and work through that plan to make sure that it is something that works for you. So a really, really good question. I have one more that's coming here, and this is a good one. Does the attendant tax credit come off the base rent of the unit or off the cost of the extra services that may be needed later on? So, for example, more PSW care.
Yeah. And Amanda, that's such a great question. I kind of thought we might get it. I'm not a tax expert, so I went to the source to canada.ca. They've got so much great information. And so this, I'm just going to read for you off of my phone what CRA is saying. So can you claim it as a medical expense? So generally you can claim the entire amount you pay for care at any of the following facilities, at a nursing home, full-time care. I won't go into all of that, but there is a note that says generally, now this is kind of how what always is with CRA. There's always these like generally. Generally, you cannot claim the entire amount you paid for a retirement home or home for seniors. However, you can claim salaries and wages for care in such facilities if the care recipient qualifies for the disability tax credit. So basically the answer is it depends. That's where you're going to need, you can see how a few professionals in your life can really help, especially when it comes to, because those can be large dollars that go towards paying your care or just cash in your pocket. So definitely dig into that, but it kind of depends. It depends answer.
Yeah, it's an excellent question, and I
It
can,
is.
recall it, my own time working as a retirement living consultant. It is a very popular
Yeah.
question, so we always encourage you, as you say, to dive into those resources and take a look and work with your financial professionals and also your accountant, whoever's doing your taxes can help you identify some of those opportunities. Yeah. Kelley, thank you so much for all of your time today, your wonderful presentation. There was so much valuable information in there. And I know that a lot of people probably took a lot of notes today. I know that I took more notes after watching it again. It was just fantastic. So thank you so much for all of your time.
Thank you, Amanda, and for everyone that tuned in.
My pleasure. So, in closing, I would like to share the story of one of our residents, Gloria, who once felt worried and lonely living in her own home, but she's now thriving in her Chartwell retirement community because she has the right support in place and people to talk to each and every day. And that is a wrap for Chartwell's virtual speaker series. So I hope our sessions have helped to inform your decision about whether now is the time for you or a loved one to move into a Chartwell retirement community. And we are all at Chartwell wishing you a safe and good health and happiness in 2021. Thanks so much.
I wasn't all that happy before I came here. I had fallen in the house, and it's lonely when you're on your own. My 3 nieces were the ones that wanted me to come in here. I was nervous about coming in, but once I arrived here, nervousness just completely disappeared because everybody welcomed me. I love it here. I feel my life has improved. You know, when you're by yourself, it's not so much fun. You still come to an empty house. This way you don't come to an empty house, you come to a bunch of lovely people. It really is a whole new chapter.
Once a resident arrives, they're welcomed. We do a transition together. Of course, they're getting a lot of socialization, a lot of exercise when they arrive here, a lot of nutritious meals. And as a result of that, they start to flourish, you know, socially, physically, mentally.
I would highly recommend anybody to come here. They're amazing here, and they treat you like you've been here forever. And the staff is just, you couldn't ask for nicer people to meet. If I had known it was like this, I would have been in here sooner.